This episode contains discussions of mental health and suicide. Information about resources for people dealing with these issues is available in the episode description.
Maddie was in her first year of high school.
I'd just started school, and the stress from the new setting, the new people, it was very overwhelming.
She was also being bullied about her weight.
My self-esteem, my mental health went downhill.
And then the COVID-19 lockdown started.
And I think all of these things happening in one go was just a lot for a child to go through. And I don't think that was fair.
One morning, she woke up and decided suicide was her way out. She walked to a bridge, climbed over the barrier, and looked down at the traffic below. I'm Tora Couture. This is Tell Me What Happened, true stories of people helping people, an original podcast by OnStar. In this episode, the danger isn't a flooded river or a grizzly bear or a house fire. The danger in this episode is depression, a mental health condition that, if untreated, can lead people to horrible outcomes, including addiction, violence, and suicide. This is the story of Maddie, a teenage girl who needed help and got it from a stranger. As a young girl, Maddie had a strong creative streak.
I was very artistic. I enjoyed art and drawing and cooking lessons a lot back then.
She was a freshman, just starting high school, in a small town outside of Birmingham, England.
I like English as well, creative writing. That was a good part of me.
A good part. But Maddie didn't see all the parts of herself as good.
I guess I lost myself on the way, but I think from the age 11 to 15 was a very hard struggle. I was being bullied due to being a more bigger child back then. Everyone would pick on my weight and how I looked, and it kind of knocked my self-esteem down. And that's kind of what set my mindset to a dark place, and it led me to nowhere, but I was in a very deep depression.
She switched to a specialized school, one with programs to handle students with special needs or mental health issues.
And it was a more suited place for someone like me. And that's when I felt more comfortable. The bullying had stopped, but I wasn't happy still. I was still struggling with my own mental health.
Through it all, her mom was there by her side, always her strongest advocate.
She picked me up and she fought for my help.
She also started therapy.
It was really, really difficult for me to open up to people because I didn't feel like I could trust many. So I kept everything to myself and I bottled it all up inside.
And then the COVID-19 pandemic hit.
I think during lockdown I was stuck indoors for just about a year. I didn't go to school for a year. It was like torture. It felt like I needed to go out. I needed to leave because being stuck in the house, it's not the best thing when you're stuck in your own head with your own thoughts. And I struggled really hard with that. And I'm guessing many other people did, which is understandable. You don't want to be on your own. And being on your own, it leads to a very dark mindset.
That dark mindset came to a head on a Thursday in June.
I woke up and everything felt like different. Like I didn't feel anything. I felt completely numb. And I knew I didn't want to fight anymore. And I thought, I'm going to do what I need to do and it will make me as a person feel better because I won't have to deal what I have to deal with every day.
In the middle of the afternoon, she put on her shoes and a light jacket.
And I said to my mum that I was going out. I said, I'll be back soon and I'll see her soon. I didn't plan to come back. That was my goodbye to my own mum.
Maddie walks for about half an hour with no specific direction in mind. But she ends up at a bridge, a highway overpass.
I knew where I was. I knew what I was doing.
For 5 minutes, she stands perfectly still, watching the cars zip past. All those people, all with someplace to go, somewhere to be.
And then that's when I decided to climb over and stand on the opposite side where I wasn't supposed to be.
Standing there on the far side of the barrier, she looks down. Below her is a 30-foot drop to a 6-lane highway.
And that's when people started noticing where I was. And I could hear the cars beeping and the people shouting at me, and they'd stop their cars just to shout and say, like, don't do it. And that life had a meaning, but I didn't want to listen to any of them.
Maddie is aware of everything around her, the noises, the voices, the wind on her face. And yet, none of it makes a difference. None of it is what she needs.
You don't want people shouting at you and making you feel worse than you already do. You want to feel understood. You want to feel like you're not alone. And that's the main thing you have to feel in that moment, is you're not alone.
A few people stop their cars and get out. Some pedestrians start to gather. But still, she feels alone.
Everyone was just bombarding me with shouting and noise, and I didn't want that at the time. So it was very difficult and I felt very overwhelmed. That's when I heard a male's voice, and that's what kind of made me just notice it, and I wanted to see who it was. I felt the curiosity, and I felt I need to turn around and see who's talking to me, because if they're directly talking to me, I'll have to talk back. I need to tell them something. And then that's when I saw David.
This is Tell Me What Happened, a podcast created by OnStar to showcase how important a human connection is when you need help. Every day when you wake up, you don't know if you'll be a person who needs help or if you'll be a person that helps someone else. It's important to remember that it's in all of us to be either one of those things every day.
This is BBC News.
David Johnson is driving home from work.
It normally takes about 35 minutes drive home. But this day took even longer because every which way I was going, there was traffic.
David works long shifts, up to 14 hours, and his drive home is his chance to decompress.
To either play loud music or rock music or something that fits in with how I'm feeling. Or sometimes I'll just play classical music if I just really want to just distress quickly.
Today, he opts for some jazz.
It was a nice bright sunny day, and I was thinking, I've finished for the day. All I got to do now is just go home, relax, and then it's a new day tomorrow. Let's see what it brings. I was in a kind of like a mellow mood at the time.
He's about 3 minutes from his house, crossing a bridge, when the traffic comes to a standstill.
And I'm the type of person that I'll give something 30 seconds. If I can't get through, I'll turn around and go the opposite way, just so I can like avoid traffic.
But today, he doesn't do that.
So I just put my window down and I shouted across the street, "What's going on?" And this guy shouted back that there's an incident on the bridge. And that was it.
For some reason, something he can't explain even to this day, David doesn't turn around and find a different route. Instead, he pulls off to the side, gets out, and walks ahead to see what's going on.
the first thing that I saw was this ambulance. And I thought, oh, they've got it under control. 2 paramedics were standing on the road. Next thing I knew, the back of the ambulance door flew open, and this young lady in a nightdress jumped out and was screaming and shouting, hurry up, for God's sake, effing hurry up, I gotta get to hospital.
He realizes that the ambulance is just another vehicle caught in the traffic. Then he notices a young woman standing on the edge of the bridge.
All I could see was this young white girl with jet black hair dressed in black. It was just like head and shoulders above the railings, and she was holding on.
He makes his way through the crowd.
There's all these people surrounding her, either giving her directions or saying things to her, and none of it was working.
David is a big guy, more than 6 feet tall and broad. He sits down on the ground, trying not to be imposing. In a calm, clear voice, he says 3 simple words to Maddie. I feel sad.
I turned around and I just froze. I was scared and I didn't know what to expect. But I guess when I saw him, he didn't look aggressive. He was a peaceful man. And it's like he actually wanted to help. And he had that in his mind, that he wanted to help me. He didn't want to cause me any stress. He didn't want to cause any more overwhelmingness.
But when I says to her, I feel sad, I think that was the moment when things changed.
For Maddie, David's words cut through the chaos.
His aura and his presence was all I needed. And I thought, okay, I said I'm safe. He's someone I can talk to. Anyone else, no, because they're shouting and they're causing mayhem in the situation. And I didn't want that. But David was just standing out from the crowd.
Then David says something that surprises her.
Can I ask you a question? And then I paused and I waited and I waited. And she says, yes, what is it? I says, if I scream, will you scream as well? I said, bearing in mind, I said, like, I'll scream like a little pig and a girl at the same time. And she goes, no, I can't, I don't want to. I says, go on, just humour me. And she goes, if you scream first, I goes, okay. And I screamed and she chuckled. And then she screamed a little bit, but not as loud as me. But I knew that was enough for her to engage and do something completely different than what she was thinking about.
Me as a person, I'm not very vocal, but I thought, give it a try and let this anger out whilst he's there. And we just screamed, and I think that let out anger, which needed to come out. And I know it sounds very, very random, but it really does help.
I just said, can I have a hug?
And that's when I said to him, yeah, you can give me a hug. And that's what kind of switched my mind. That hug felt so tight and needed and meaningful. I broke down in his arms and I told him, I'm a child, like, I don't want to be here. And I want to feel happy again. I want to feel like the old me. And he just held me tighter and tighter, and that's what made everything just disappear in that moment. No one was shouting, it was just me and him.
But then from then I thought, I haven't got a clue what I'm going to do next. Because my thought process only went up to that point.
So they just stand there, 2 strangers, a large black man in his 50s and a white girl in her teens, sharing a hug on the edge of a bridge.
I didn't know what I needed, but every minute, every second that he was holding me and reassuring me that I'm allowed to feel the way I feel.
After a while, David tells Maddie his name. And then she tells him hers. They talk and even share a joke. Then together they step over the barrier to safety.
I realised he's just saved me. He's just helped me climb back over and give life one more chance. And I think that's what meant the most in that moment, that he gave me a chance to live and to experience life the way I'm meant to.
They were in each other's lives for about 45 minutes on a random afternoon, but their impact on each other was life-changing. For David, it's given him a new purpose in life.
Went back home, opened the newspaper up, and I saw this advert for this mental health recovery worker job, and I says, I'm going for that. I can do that, I think. And I went for the interview that same week, and I told them the story, and then they gave me the job. So when Maddie sent me a text message saying, thank you for saving my life, I says to her, no, thank you. I've got a new job. I've got a new career. I've got a new direction, working in mental health.
And Maddie, she also got a new life.
I'm very different. I've changed a lot mentally, physically, and I've grown as a person from who I was back then. And I'm a very more, I'd say, social person. So I'm a lot better than who I was.
It makes me so proud that the second chance that she's got, she hasn't wasted it. And that she is still so happy.
Back then, I was very fragile. Now I feel the strength. I feel strong enough to know that I can overcome certain things happening. I can overcome it and I can move on from it. And I can fight against my own demons. Because I know I've got that strength from David. He gave me that strength that day. And I've carried it with me ever since.
Maddie also has a message for anyone feeling the way she did that day.
People who are struggling in silence, I want them to talk. I want them to find someone to confide in and to trust, and don't bottle it up, because keeping all these dark thoughts to yourself, it doesn't help, and it only ever builds up to your breaking point. But if anyone's struggling, just see what help you can get, whether that's in your family, your friends, possibly a stranger you've just met. Like, you never know who's going to help you.
Maddie was saved, but every day there are people who aren't. Ella Thomas was one of those people. She took her own life. Her brother, NFL player Solomon Thomas, and their parents, Chris and Martha, founded an education program called The Defensive Line. Together, they teach people how to identify youth at risk and how to intervene before it's too late.
We were doing a workshop, and a woman said, I came to your workshop today because I've heard you speak. And the day I heard you speak, I went home and I asked my son, are you thinking of suicide? And he said, yes. And, she continued on with the questions, and he had a plan. And she said, he's been in and out of treatment since I heard you speak, mental health treatment. And it's hard work, but he's still here. He's still here because I asked him, because of what you said.
How does that make you feel, considering all the work you put into this organization and doing that day in, day out?
That it's worth it, because it's hard work. And it's certainly, work of passion and love. And to hear that makes us all feel like we need to keep going, and what we're doing matters.
How big is this problem in the U.S.? What scale are we talking about?
119 young people under the age of 24 die by suicide every week. That's 2/3 the size of a Boeing 737. And we tell people if a Boeing 737 was going down once a week, Congress would stop air traffic. That's just under the age of 24. One person dies by suicide every 11 minutes.
Wow. So for those who have young people in their life, what are signs to look for that they might be struggling?
It could be giving away possessions. It could be irritability. It could be withdrawal. But it could be something totally different. So too much sleep, too little sleep, but really noticing a change in behavior and then asking the person about that change in behavior.
Starting that conversation about mental health can be really hard. You don't want to be overwhelming someone with questions. So what do you find is the best way to connect?
To ask a question and to listen for an answer. The power of listening is undervalued. But if you're asking someone how they really are, our son tells a story the year after our daughter died about someone saying to him, "Hey, Solomon, how are you doing?" And he said, "Fine." And he said, "No, man, I mean, how are you really doing?" And he said he just started to sob. So if we really listen to people and not try to fix them, not try, to tell them, well, if you just do this, you'll feel better, but to really just listen and then to connect over what they're saying, ask them more questions. We always tell people, too, that asking the question, "Are you thinking of suicide?" is not triggering. There are dozens of studies that show that that is a safe question to ask. And it may even cause the person who's being asked to find relief.
Is there any other specific language we can use or language to avoid?
Certainly, we always say using the term commit suicide is very dated and implies a crime. You wouldn't say that someone was committing cancer. You wouldn't say that someone had committed an broken leg. Also, talking about the means can be a trigger. So we want to make sure we don't talk about the means of suicide or, not saying it was a successful suicide, a completed suicide.
Generating these conversations can be especially hard with a teenager. They can be pretty introspective. I know from experience asking a high school age kid at the dinner table, "How was your day?" You're lucky to get a one-word response. How can I get them to open up more, to talk more?
First of all, leaving a pause, because young teens don't like the pause. They don't like the silence. It makes them nervous. So if you give it a little space, a lot of times they'll start talking, and again, it's listening, right? And setting aside your judgment. What may be very triggering and traumatic for a 13-year-old sounds ridiculous to a 40-year-old. But if we let them pause, and not judge it, not say, "Oh, that's not that bad. You should try being an adult," or something like that. Just talk more about how it makes them feel.
I just want to share a couple numbers for people who might want them. If you want to text, you can text to 741-741. That's the crisis text line. And 988 is a hotline you can call for mental health issues. That's available anywhere in the U.S.
Also, you can call 988 on someone else's behalf and get resources. So you don't have to be the person in crisis, nor do you have to wait till there is a crisis. You can call when things just aren't going right and you have questions and concerns.
Thank you very much, Martha.
Thank you so much for having me, Tora.
That's it for this episode of Tell Me What Happened. True stories of people helping people. We share a new story every other week. But if you're in the mood for another one right now, scroll back in time to one of our earlier episodes. On behalf of OnStar, I'm Tora Couture. Please, be safe out there.
If you or someone you know is dealing with thoughts of suicide, call the crisis hotline at 988 in the United States and Canada or 111 in the UK. Additional resources are also available via this episode's show notes. Take care.